Save the Semantics, episode 312. It is April 30th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Wednesday afternoon / evening. It was supposed to be, I was looking forward to today's game, game 5 of the Rockets and Warriors. They're actually playing right now, and they are down 30 in the third quarter. So it's going to be one of those. It feels very reminiscent of the Memphis game from 2022 when the Warriors lost by like 40 or something like that before clinching the series. But yeah. This is one of those, I think, where you just have to brush it off. Not, I think it'll be good to give everyone some rest, give Steph some rest, give Jimmy some rest, give everybody a little bit of a rest, because they did put a lot into Game 4. And I think it was incredibly important to get that game, especially. It would have been nice to do a little gentleman sweep, but it does not seem to be going that way. So I think it's better just to move forward towards Game 6. And I predicted Warriors in 6, and it's sort of lining up to be that way. So that's that. Just watching kind of the first quarter-ish, everything just seemed so sluggish. They were forcing up these shots. Like I feel like both Pajemski and GP2 were forced to make some shots, or forced to make some attempts. Because nobody else was really doing a whole ton. I felt like everything was just sluggish. Steph was incredibly sloppy, and they were kind of allowing the Rockets to just kind of muck things up. And it's one of those. I don't think, I was expecting. Well, I don't know what to expect. I was expecting a closer game. I was expecting, to just kind of finish it off, which, listen, I think it would have been ideal to do so, to win this game, and to, hope for the Wolves and Lakers series to go to 7. That is not going to be the case. I mean, the Wolves game is later tonight, so, I don't want to root for the Lakers by any means, but if we're looking at it from, if we're looking ahead, which I don't like to do, because the Warriors, they didn't win today. They still have 2 more chances to close it out. I really would like for them to win Game 6. Don't even play around with Game 7. But if we are in a scenario where we are hoping, and the Warriors are able to move into the second round, I think for the sake of the team, it would be beneficial for there to be extended, for the Wolves and the Lakers series to go longer. If it ends today, if that series ends today, well, listen, you never know. If this game is a blowout, you never know. It might be a blowout for Lakers-Wolves too, and that will be like, okay, then we're sort of in the same situation, and that's that. But I don't know. We'll wait and see. I am cautiously optimistic. Not a great outing though. For some reason they just struggle to close these kinds of games for some reason. I don't know why. 22, we saw that. This year we've struggled to kind of really. Obviously, Game 4 and Game 3 were huge, but I don't know. It's been a little hard to it's been hard for them to really like when the time is like needed. I don't know. It feels like they hit a bit of a wall. So I get it, older team, all that stuff, but I really would hope that they can they can close out on Game 6. Anyways, let's talk a little bit more about last night's games. Obviously, I talked about the Pacers Bucks and that whole thing, and how that all went down. Talked a little bit. Did I talk about the Knicks Pistons? No, because it was in the middle of it, right? So Detroit wins against New York, and they push it to Game 6 back home in Detroit, which is, I think it's a really, I think it's you know, I think it is good for the fact that they were able to just extend the series and not get beat in 5. Every game they've been in it, like just the games they've lost. Game 1 was, I think, the nerves and all that stuff. Game 3, which was it Game 3 or Game 4? I don't remember. But the ones in Detroit both were close. We talked about the ones, the missed call, just move past that. But, it has been incredibly close, and it could have gone either way in a lot of these games. So I think Detroit should feel really confident. Like they've had the whole, like, there is no pressure on them. You know what I mean? Like, for them, it's just like, if they lose the next game, it's over. So it's just like, might as well just do the best they can, push this to 7, try to get an upset on down 3-1. Like that's really, it is going to be very difficult, because I'm sure the Knicks are going to want to close. I don't know how, like, the Knicks team just gives me absolutely no confidence that they'll really be able to do anything. Like, even if they do advance, they're playing the Celtics. It's really hard for me to envision a scenario in which they are going to be able to beat that team. Their defensive issues are so kind of apparent with Cat and Brunson. Like, if Anunoby and Mikal Bridges are not able to be put into, like, the action to defend, the Celtics' best players, like, even then, obviously, they still have so many other pieces that can hurt them, just with, like, 5 out and everything. So I don't know. It's and then obviously you can just look at the results of the regular season and the fact that the Knicks did not win really any of the games against the Boston, Cleveland, or OKC. So that doesn't really give you a ton of confidence if you're New York. When it's the playoffs, sure, things might be different. There might be some situations that line up for you and that you can kind of take advantage of. But I do think that there are a lot of things that you can kind of take away. And also the fact that this series against the Pistons have shown that they just don't particularly perform very well with a ton of, like, pressure, a ton of, like, physical pressure. And I don't know, I feel like if you're Boston, like, which matchup would you prefer in this scenario? Like, would you want New York? Like, I would feel pretty good. I mean, if you're Boston, you would feel pretty good either way, whether it is Detroit or New York. But I do think that Detroit, in kind of a similar way to what Orlando did in their first series, create some uncomfortable, like, situations where they put pressure and they bring a lot more physicality into the game. That could potentially bother Boston. I just don't know, like, on New York's side, like, who do they have that can really do that can really kind of match that sort of intensity? I don't really know. And also the fact that Brunson, and I think Hart was also, he kind of went out towards the end of the game as well. Brunson's just been hobbled for a good chunk of the series. It is just the age-old case, and it is just the thing that, like, that has stayed true throughout Tom Thibodeau's career, is that he just runs his players into the ground. It has been the case for his entire coaching career and tenure. Like, it is just, like, I understand, he is a floor raiser. He's able to push his teams and really maximize the talent, but just the rotations, especially during the regular season, right? You understand shortening the rotation going into the playoffs and really sticking to your best group of players, but the way that was approached in the regular season, you're gonna run. It's kind of like, that is like one of the most clear example. Like, I am still very, very, low level in terms of my understanding of the game, management, all of the aspects that kind of go into basketball. But that is like that is one of the things that I feel very, clear-minded about, is the fact that if you just run your guys 40 plus minutes a game for 82 games, that's going to have some negative effects going into the postseason. That has just been historically the case, and that just hasn't wavered. Like, there has not been anything that has changed from the performance of Tibbs teams that has shown me that players are able to overcome the amount of stress that their bodies are put under, and the amount of minutes that they log throughout the course of the season, right? There has not been anything that's been shown, right? They run out of gas. You saw that with, like, in cases of, like, Chicago. Obviously Derrick Rose's injury was, that you can't exactly say that was because of Tom Thibodeau, Tibbs, like, his coaching schematics and his way of going about it, but you can't not say that there was, like, at least a bit of a contribution to the wear and tear that Rose's body went through, you know what I mean? So, and then on top of that, you got, like, players like Luol Deng and his like, injury history, the fact that he was kind of run into the ground as a part of that Chicago roster. So it's just so many instances of this that you really can't, I don't know, you just can't overlook that. And you can kind of, like, shy away from it. You can be like, no, Tom Thibodeau, he's a really great coach and all that, and sure, but there are clear limitations, and it feels his coaching approach is very dated in this day and age. You look at some of the best teams in the league right now, and the way that their rosters are handled. You look at Cleveland, you look at OKC, they go 10 deep. I think even the Celtics go like 9, 10 deep, and they can, because, like, they they essentially, like, blow teams out of the water, and then so their reserves can come in. But the best teams they have top end talent, sure, they shorten the rotation, but they have a deep team. They have a deeper team that allows them to kind of give their best players some rest. And That's just not that has not been and never has been the case with Tibbs teams. And I like New York. I like what they were able to do last year. I thought they were like a really fun story. This year is a lot different because of like the expectations that were placed in getting Cat and Mikal Bridges and this core five group. But it left their bench so depleted, and it's so, just lacking in really any additional scoring or just any sort of punch whatsoever. And it kind of like leaned so much more into Tibbs' tendencies that it kind of, you're just seeing the results of that. And then also on top of, Thibodeau's like coaching style, Brunson kind of obliges and is willing to like put those minutes on his body because he feels that he's able to take that challenge on. And in some cases he is, but also it feels like there isn't like other people in that sphere, other coaching staff that are able to say, hey, listen, man, we got to give this dude some rest. It's not going to be the best in certain instances, but we cannot afford to take the risk of potentially getting our best player in further injury risk and those kinds of things. So it just sucks, man, because like it's so obvious, and like I feel that for the Knicks' sake, regardless of how far they go, regardless if they get into the second round or if they I mean, obviously if they lose this first round, I think they'll definitely need to make some changes, and I think Tibbs is probably going to be the first one to go. But even if they get to the second round, I think they should think about it. I think they should think about moving on from him, because there is a clear ceiling to Thibodeau teams, and it's just historically, man, that's just been the case. He's very stubborn. He's a good coach, and I think there's a lot of things that you can definitely appreciate with him, but the same issues persist, and they haven't changed in like a decade plus, since the Chicago days. You know what I mean? Like, even when I was younger and I wasn't really paying like that much attention, obviously I was very, when you're a kid, you're really only surface level. But even then, like I had heard about these criticisms that were being levied toward Tom Thibodeau, and like that was just like a very clear kind of outcry. I don't remember the exact reasoning for why he was let go. Obviously the Rose Bulls came to kind of just a very unfortunate ending with his injury and everything, right? But I'm sure that like a lot of other things came to the forefront. It is something that I kind of want to look back on and take a look back at, what kind of led to that ending, the premature ending for the Rose Bulls and the Thibodeau Bulls. I feel like I keep messing up his pronunciation. It's Thibodeau, right? And it's just like a fascinating, piece of looking at someone who has been held in high regard, who has not won a championship as a head coach, and consistently shows that there are limitations to his coaching style and his rotation schematics and all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at where the Knicks are. It feels very reminiscent of what the Bulls kind of went through 10 plus years ago in a way. But yeah, shout out to the Pistons. They didn't really have like a great game. I think they had a lot of contributors, just a lot of evenly contributed pieces that led to their victory. Cade didn't have exactly the best game, but he was just solid. Asar Thompson came through this time around, and he had a really nice game. Putting in some effort on the offensive end this time around. It looks like Amen Thompson is having quite the contribution in Game 5 this time around as well. So looks like the Thompson twins kind of leveled up for Game 5 in both instances, which is kind of funny to see. But shout out to the Pistons. I'm excited to see that game tomorrow. I do think the Knicks still pull it off and win, but look, man, in kind of a similar case to us, you don't want it to be going to 7. You really don't, especially when you're up 3-1. You do not want that. Like that just puts so much pressure on your team. And not saying that they can't pull it off, right? Like most teams that are up 3-1 are expected to kind of win the series, but it's a little hard to, like, with how shaky this Knicks team has been this year. It feels like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of things to kind of doubt with them. So you can there is kind of this faith. I think there's a lot of belief in this Pistons team to be able to really push this Knicks team, and I think there was kind of that sense too, even before going into this series, that the Pistons shouldn't be written off with their play. They have a very clear number one, just a number one player on their team with Cade, and he's really leading with example, and it's good to kind of it's been really fun to see their turnaround. I've talked about this in length about just the fact that they've tripled their win total and everything like that. I would really like for them to really push the series to as long as they can. I think that if they somehow pull off an upset, that would be pretty incredible on their half. But I think regardless of that, I think that it's been a really great season, regardless of how it ends, whether it ends this series, whether it ends tomorrow in Detroit. It would be nice to get at least one home win for Detroit, right? But yeah, it's been crazy. It's been a crazy turnaround for them. So that's been really good. The other game from yesterday, the Nuggets and Clippers game, which the tonal shift, thinking that Denver was just completely out of it, thinking that the Clippers just kind of had them up against the wall. They were up to 2-1, and then you had the miracle, Aaron Gordon tip and dunk to win it in Game 4, and then in Game 5 yesterday, pretty dominant performance by Denver. They won by about like 15 or so, but it always felt like they had just they always had just control of the game, which I thought was pretty impressive, right? It was just and then Jamal Murray just looked amazing, like his sort of like playoff riser. I just the fact that he's able to do that is such an interesting player. He is like, it's like him, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has, he's obviously been an all-star and everything like that. But Jamal Murray is the quintessential example of a playoff riser, someone who elevates their game when needed most. And it's a little hard for me to kind of think of a player whose contribution, increases as much as his does. Someone who has never been an all-star, who has never been like all NBA or anything like that. Like he's a fascinating player, but he looked awesome. He looked super comfortable. He was just making shots in like Harden's face, and I think he was playing very well against someone even like Chris Dunn. Yeah, so I don't know. Like the Clippers, the momentum completely shifted after last game, and because it really felt, it was just like they beat the Nuggets by like 30 plus, and it was like, oh man, this might be it for the Clipper. I mean, this might be it for the Nuggets, which I was kind of thinking that. I had a whole I gave them the whole spiel in a similar way to like the Bucks, and it's like, no, they're not done yet, man. They're not done. Like at least the Nuggets have a really solid starting five. It's just their depth that really has a lot of issues, right? Like, Jokic, you have Jamal Murray, you have Michael Porter Jr., you have Aaron Gordon. They have like a really good complementary group of players to surround Jokic. It's just, their depth, I think, is kind of the question here. But Jamal Murray, he rose to the challenge, and he really took it over. This was really his game. Jokic, he still had a triple-double, but you couldn't really feel his effect too much, at least just on the, box score, if you're just like box score watching. But yeah, I think I still think this series is going to go 7. I feel like the Clippers are probably going to pull it off in game 6. But yeah, because I think here's the thing. I think it's easy to be hyperbolic game after game, kind of similar to how I was to some of the results of the other games that happened. But I do think the Clippers are still a good enough team to where they can really bring this to a full series, unless the Nuggets somehow close it out in game 6. But I envision that this is going to go 7. But it's been a crazy series. It's been one of my favorite series to watch so far, with just all of the endings and just the last. Well, outside of maybe game 3 and this game, the rest of the series has been very, very close. And so, yeah, I think this is gonna go 7. It's gonna go 7. Gonna go the full way. And I still think the Nuggets are gonna pull it off though. In 7, they have the best player. It doesn't help that James Harden is also on the Clippers too, who has notoriously not shown up in when his team has needed him. So that doesn't really bode very well. I think having James Harden kind of cancels out the effect of Kawhi Leonard in a way. Like you got one of the best playoff performers in Kawhi Leonard, and then you just get that just gets netted out with James Harden's contribution. Obviously, that's such a simple look at things, but you know what I mean? If that has been historically the case, it's hard to ignore that. But yeah, it's been a really, and I've already said this, but it has been a really good first round compared to last year. Because last year we really just had the Knicks and Sixers series, which was really fun. That was a really fun series. But outside of that, not really a ton. I think there were some sweeps, and some series just weren't very interesting. Just like matchup, I think it didn't help that there were players injured as well. But this first round has been awesome so far. This has been like some of the best basketball that I've seen in quite some time, in years, I would say. Because I'm trying to think back, like when were there any other, 23. I guess we had like the Heat run. That was probably the most compelling storyline from that season, at least for the playoffs. Last year, I guess like the Wolves upsetting the Nuggets, but outside of that, not a ton of other interesting moments or series. So the fact that this one has just so many moving pieces, and a lot of crazy endings has made it all the more exciting and watchable as well. And I think the kind of the viewership has also reflected that as well. So it's been good. It's been really good. And just going to be continuing to update for those things. Unless the Warriors somehow pull off the biggest comeback in playoff history, going on with Game 6. I think they'll be back home on, is it Friday, right? It should be Friday, right? Because it's just, as the series progresses, there's just like a 1 day break in between. So next game is going to be Game 6 on Friday. And depending on, what the result of this Wolves-Lakers game is, I'll maybe talk about that tomorrow. And anything else that catches my attention. So we'll leave it off at that. And I'll catch back up tomorrow. All right, recording this on Thursday, May 1st. Right now, kind of in the middle of it's halftime of the Knicks-Pistons Game 6. So I am eager to see how this game concludes. I watched the first half, and New York went on a pretty large tear, and it felt like they had pretty significant control over this game, but Detroit just kind of fought back and just sort of grinded their way back into this game. And now at halftime, it looks like they have a 2-point lead, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. They kind of have all of the cards, I would say. Win or lose, this has been an incredibly successful season for them. So, but if they can eke one more out, if they can get this to 7, that's gonna be something. You know what I mean? And I do expect that Game 7 to be quite contentious, and I think the Knicks would probably be feeling a lot of pressure in Game 7, but we'll see. We'll wait until we'll see until the results of this game. So it's been 2 years in a row now that I have sort of predicted against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last year, when they went up against the Phoenix Suns, which the Phoenix Suns completely owned that regular season matchup, I myself and other people thought that was going to be a problem for them. I thought that just the offensive threat, the three-headed dragon of a Booker, Durant, and Beal was going to be difficult for them to overcome, and their defensive their defensive prowess, despite how strong they were last year, was not going to be enough to contain those players. And I was wrong. I was wrong about that. They swept them. The Wolves swept the Suns. It wasn't close at all. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, there's like a precedent here that there are some clear weaknesses with this Wolves team, and I felt the same exact way going into this Lakers-Wolves series. I just over the course of the season, despite how well they finished, I think they went 17-4 over their last 20-ish games or so. Despite that, I thought that their fourth quarter woes would catch up to them. I thought that their inability to be able to execute down the stretch was going to cause a lot of issues in this series, and that was completely the opposite of the fact. In fact, they were the better fourth quarter team than the Lakers in, I think, in each of the 5 games, even in their loss. So it just it's like anytime I doubt them, they've sort of proven me wrong. And I'm pretty sure I took Denver last year as well, and that didn't go well. So I don't know. I don't exactly remember who I took in the Dallas matchup. I didn't really watch the Western Conference or just any of the conference finals games last year, but I don't recall who I predicted. But I don't know, man. Like, it just seems like every time I go one way, they go the complete opposite way. And it's just funny. Listen, like, I feel like these issues are things that I have seen, and I think I feel, I feel, what is it? I feel that I have reason to question these things and question their play. But over the course of the last couple of seasons, going into the postseason, during their during their conference finals run last year, they've completely just, I guess, just eviscerated any of those kinds of issues, right? And I do think, and even with the Lakers like matchup, you had Luka. Luka played, outplayed the Wolves in the conference finals last year. So it's just like on top of all of these things, like I thought that the combination of a Luka LeBron, tandem and the, you know, just the fact that historically the Wolves have not shown to be the best closers. And I think in my head, and I keep referencing this game, but honestly, if you look back, there have been a lot of fourth quarter collapses by many, many teams over the course of this season. So it might be a little harsh to like pin it on the Wolves, but I still think about that Milwaukee Timberwolves game from, about a month or so ago, before the end of the regular season, when they blew like a 20+ point lead. And but I still was thinking of that. That still was kind of lingering in the back of my mind, when in reality that kind of just might have been a fluke, and that might have just have been a case of the other team getting super hot, and just the lack of, I don't know, there just one team got super hot and the other team got cold, and that just happens pretty much daily, honestly, over the course of the regular season. But I kind of saw that as sort of my last image of what the Wolves were, despite them playing well overall by the end of the season. So that kind of thing lingered. I feel there's just, and I don't know, maybe like those issues that I've seen over the course of this regular season, and even the last regular season, have still kind of remained there, but that did not show up in this series. I didn't watch most of this game. I did watch like maybe the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter or so. I was I was anticipating that the Lakers were gonna come out and swing, and that was just not at all what happened. Wolves had a pretty, they had like a decent control over the, first half of the game. The fact that they shot so poorly was like, is honestly kind of more of an indictment on the Lakers, the fact that they couldn't capitalize on that. Rudy Gobert had the game of his life, his career, 27 and 24 points and rebounds, which is absolutely nuts. Like, that was just not something that you anticipated. I think that was something where a lot of people were saying that he was going to get played off with Luka and that kind of thing. And over the course of the last few games, I would say his, he did kind of get played off the floor in like the fourth quarter. I think I just remember the ending lineup of game, I think 4 in Minnesota. It was Naz Reid, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Dante DiVincenzo, and then Ant. So Gobert was just not a part of that lineup because of the small ball. That the Lakers just were so they were just so honed in on playing, and it just didn't work. And in this game, Rudy just took advantage of the fact that he was the biggest player on the floor, and was just like dunking all over the place. So second year in a row that I doubted the Wolves. And listen, I feel like it's for decent reason. Like, I think it's just, and maybe the issue is that looking at things historically is maybe not the best basis for reference, for comparison. You know what I mean? Because I'm comparing regular season games where there's less at stake, the way in which the game is managed or coached is completely different. You're going series by series. You tend to play the best players of your team way more, so that contributes to a higher level of play, right? So I guess it's just kind of hard to do that, to kind of really, take a piece of that information and then like project it onto the to playoff basketball because of just it being a completely different atmosphere. And maybe that's just a fault because like, look, I took the Lakers just like in 7, just because I thought that the quality of players that Luka and LeBron were going to be enough to complement each other. I just think the lack of depth that they have was completely, just completely highlighted. And just it has, and it's another case similar to the Phoenix series of last year, where just having such, high, having star players and star names without the infrastructure to support that doesn't automatically equal success. And I think I still struggle to, have a clear and complete understanding of that. And I think I'm still sort of like haven't come to terms with that. And I think a lot of people still haven't come to terms with the fact that having these names on your roster does not translate and doesn't automatically mean that they are the better team, right? It is the roster makeup. It is the way in which, players complement each other. It is the way in which, schemes are employed. Like there are so many other aspects that it is not just about having the best player on the floor. And that's something that we've seen time and time in other series. We see that in in the Bucks series, just having the best player on the floor doesn't mean that, that it just means that they're going to win. I know it's a different case there because he's just completely on his own. And then, you look at last year, it's just having the 3, better offense, quote unquote, better offensive players on your team doesn't mean that it's going to translate to immediate success. Especially when the other side of the ball isn't all that much accounted for, right? So I think that it's you're bound to be wrong in a lot of instances, right? Like I've been wrong about a lot of these predictions, right? And I think it's just kind of a learning. It's just a learning experience, right? And many other people are wrong about this series as well. So I think it's about understanding. And here's the thing, like there's probably going to be another series down the line where I see a similar matchup where one team has the names, has the household names, but it just doesn't, like the other side has younger but a better fit group that can counter whatever that that other team is bringing to the table. And I think these are things that as I sort of get a better hold on looking at basketball and looking at the NBA more closely, more analytically, that it is much more than just who's like on the team, right? Do these players fit together? How well is the coach going about maintaining those lineups? Are the players being run into the ground? Are you playing your 40-year-old star 40 minutes a game? Like these are things that going into this series, like I wasn't, it was sort of like in the back of my mind, right? That LeBron would need to play these heavy minutes, but I think this is an instance where that age factor really does factor into the results of the series and each of the individual games, right? Running the same lineup for an entire half, as JJ Redick did for Game 4, right? And the results of that, and you kind of saw that just throughout the series, where, yeah, again, fourth quarter statistics really just show that their production just falls off a cliff, right? Because their players are exhausted, and so it is about the roster makeup, how well everything else just complements each other, whether the stars have the support they need, and in this case, the depth of the Wolves overcame, and just all, the size and the strength and all of those things overcame the star power of Luka and LeBron, right? I think, and for me, I think I was so honed in on like fourth quarter, which was completely dispelled, and also the just the overall star power, and that was dispelled as well. Like, it's just, and you could, again, you can also pinpoint back to those Phoenix Suns, where it's like you got like these 2-3 players that can score, who knows, maybe like 80 or 90 of the 100 plus points, but it's like, who else is going to make up for that? Is there anybody on the bench that is going to be able to chip in a little bit more? Like, you can't expect all three of these players to be clicking all at the same time every single game. And in this case, while Luka and LeBron, they both put up some big numbers because they essentially kind of had to, the rest of the supporting cast, although shout out Rui Hachimura, he had a pretty good series, the rest of the cast was very lacking. So these are all things, and it's probably basic. It's probably very, very basic, really, and not complex at all. If anybody has had any semblance of just experience, just analyzing the NBA and all of that stuff. But for me, it's still kind of a learning process for me, where I think I get caught up in what other people are saying, and I also get caught up in my own with my own thoughts and my own theories, and I just hone in on, I think really for me, just to reiterate, not to harp on it too much longer, I think just sticking with, really, I think it was just the fact that it wasn't necessarily even the star power of Luka and LeBron, although some of it had to do with it. It was just much more like, I don't know if I can trust the Wolves in crunch time. Like, that was like the thing in the back of my head. Like, and that was really kind of the big thing that I was really concerned about. It's like, how are they going to execute? Are they going to run ISO Ant like every single play, or ISO Randall every single play, like in the fourth quarter? I'm like, that just sounds kind of like a disaster, right? And that was just not at all what happened. Ant improved his playmaking despite, his shooting, just awful shooting yesterday. He had a play down the stretch where he drove in, the defense collapsed, and then he kicked it out to Mike Conley for essentially the dagger three. That was just something, I think that was a part of his sort of playmaking maturity. The fact that he wasn't seeking to be kind of the hero at the end of this game, I think is just is just something that I think you have to really compliment him and really sort of take into account that he's just continuing to get better, and I think he recognizes that it is not all about him. It is not about his. Of course, he has had moments throughout this series where he closed out the games, but that's not always going to be the case. Like, he's not always going to be the sole solution to his team winning. And I think that was something that I didn't necessarily foresee, even though last year, in his kind of true, I guess, coming out party, on his way to the, Western Conference Finals, we did see a lot of growth, and I think that growth has continued into these playoffs as well. So that's something that you really do have to credit him and his progression for. Some other things. I thought it was really, I thought it just because this wasn't like high. I mean, honestly, it probably should have been a little higher on my list of series just because this is like a potential matchup for the Warriors. I mean, well, now, if the Warriors do win tomorrow, they will be facing off against the Wolves, right? But this wasn't like particularly high on my list of watches. I do recall the last two Minnesota games being pretty just like high tension in closing out, and just watching kind of the end of those games. But I I didn't put it super high on my list because I don't know how. I wasn't quite sure how entertaining these games would have been. I'm not a big fan of watching Luka play. Like, he is phenomenal, but his his way of like going about it is just like, I mean, it is incredible seeing some of the shots he's made over the course of his career, but it's just not the most entertaining in my opinion, right? I'd much rather watch a team like the Pacers and how fast they move and their ball movement and all of these things. And as opposed to like a single player kind of, essentially bully his way to making a shot. There is a lot of, there is something to be said about that. There is a lot to appreciate about that. Absolutely. But, and then just kind of that matchup, I just wasn't quite sure, just like, because I don't recall the Timberwolves being like super high on the offensive end, but I might be completely mistaken. I think they were actually pretty high, ending off on the season, right? But just sort of the back, I didn't know really what to expect. I just think the watchability factor for me was something that I just wasn't really super keen on. Like, sure, Ant versus Luka and LeBron is pretty exciting, and maybe I'm just being like a hater of like both teams. But I mean, look, like I do think it's really impressive on the Wolves end to clear this out and just really essentially shut people down and be like, hey, listen, this isn't what all basketball's all about, man. It's not just about the names, Luka and LeBron and stuff like that, and proving a lot of people, including me, wrong. I just think that I don't know, it just wasn't the series that I was sort of keen to. I for some reason, I'm not exactly sure why. Whether it was just like me anticipating that the playmaking or whatever wasn't, or just the shot making, while impressive, wasn't going to be the most exciting. I don't know exactly. It just didn't like click for me in the same way as some of the other series, like the Nuggets and the Clippers and that kind of thing. But I have watched the highlights and stuff, and but yeah, I mean, I think it is worth maybe just taking a brief look over what the Wolves have done. I mean, they have a very deep team, and Warriors need to close it out. That's it. I know I keep saying that. They just need to close it out on Friday. They didn't close it out yesterday. It really just kind of took the foot off the gas, which in turn, unfortunately, doesn't allow the team to get more rest. As if they close it out, I think they would have gotten a few more days of rest, which is incredibly important for this old ass team. You know what I mean? So Wolves, regardless, are going to have some kind of advantage there. But it's not. I don't even want to predict. I hate. Like, I predict the Warriors winning this series against the Rockets, but further down the line, I don't like predicting my team to win. I don't know who's going to win this series if it does end up going that way. But again, don't count your chickens before they hatch and all that stuff. So, but I mean, good for the Wolves though. I mean, they really kind of showed up and shut down any criticism and any any doubt that was kind of levied toward their way. Julius Randle had a pretty great series. He seemed like he was very consistent across the board. But yeah, just what a end to that. I mean, it's just so funny. It's just so funny that I keep doubting them, and then they just sort of prove me wrong. Maybe I'm just a little too. I think maybe I'm just too keened in on specific things when overall the team has this, or they have this kind of growing identity. It is also very interesting considering the cat trade and everything like that. It was, I thought that, this year I think was going to be sort of this, I don't know how to say it, bye year, just sort of, what's the right term for this? Just like a leave of absence. What do you call this? Like, just sort of a year, a year where you take off of work. What is that called? I know there's a term for that. Just like a leave of absence, a year, just like a year abroad where, it just wasn't, there people, I think, including myself, were like, well, actually, if I go back, I thought that this was a better trade for the Wolves than it was for the Knicks, right? I think I actually said that in my initial reaction, but whatever. But I do think that there was reason to suspect that this year was sort of like a lost year for the Wolves, that it would essentially kind of be going forward. It's like, oh, you can, maybe you can ship off Randall and get some pieces back and then use that to kind of rebuild and retool around Ant and, try to build a better and deeper team next year. This was sort of like, and we saw sort of the struggles earlier on in this season where they were just not good. They didn't look good. There were some clear issues with Randall and Gobert in the front court. But it seems that those things have those irons, those kinks have been sort of ironed out, and they're clicking at the right time. They're playing. They started playing a lot better as the end of the season progressed, and now they're right back where they want to be, I think. And there is the potential. I don't want to put it out there because obviously I want my team to win, but there is like a path for them to get back to the Western Conference Finals, right? And I think it's pretty impressive, all things considered. Just the huge and major shakeup that they had with trading Cat for salary purposes and for money reasons. But it has sort of managed to work out for them, and it seems like it's working out in New York as well. Obviously that series is still going, and I don't know, is that gonna, if they manage to get to the second round, like how well are they gonna fare against Boston? I have no idea. But it has sort of worked out in some ways. And I think it's a testament to the players buying into this culture and the idea and the structure of this team, and probably a lot of some coaching as well. I think Chris Finch it sounds like he's done a really good job in having the players buy into his system. He's had to like completely shift his vision of the team, because last year they were such a dominant defensive force. They were like clearly the best defensive team last year, right? That was like something that they really hung their hat on. But this year there had to be a shift in philosophy and how they approached their team, because they just didn't have like the same personnel anymore. Like obviously, outside of like, and then also just their offensive woes, I think were still kind of there. So it's like, how is that going to look with Randall in the mix? Like he's not really exactly known as a defensive stopper or anything like that. But he has had some good moments. Like I do remember like his defense, I think in game 4, I don't remember which one, where it was like 2 minutes or, crunch time, and Luka was going into him, and he was able to really get a good, I think it was game 4. He was able to really get like a good stop on Luka on the post there, and he just Luka couldn't do anything. He couldn't like turn around or bump into him because Randall was just too strong. Like, just physically they were kind of equals, right? So there I think that is a reflection of the fact that Randall really, I guess has honed into becoming a better defensive player and working within that defensive system. I think having Rudy Gobert as the backline probably helps a lot in that, and having trust in that. I think it's cool to see that he has really outworked and overcome the moniker that was kind of unfortunately placed on him as being as one of the worst playoff performers in New York. But I just think the circumstances of that have been completely just been, wiped away. Just the fact that he was really their only offensive threat and creator in that 2021 series where they lost in 5 to Trae Young and the Hawks, right? And then I think he had another series against, I believe it was Miami, right? From the year following, where he also didn't have a good series, but it was kind of a similar issue, and there was also the fact that he was, partially injured. I think that heavily factored into his inability to produce during that series. So I think it's cool that he's had kind of like a little redemption story. Obviously, it's not done yet, but he's really, he just based on some of the things that I've seen from him, he's looked really good, and I think it's cool that there is kind of this overcoming of past demons and those kinds of things, and sort of recreating a new image of yourself. And I think that's really cool that he's been able to do that. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I want to get back and watch the Knicks and Pistons game, but and then also the Clippers Nuggets game, which is going to be later tonight. That's going to be a fun one as well. 2 potential elimination games going on today, and then obviously tomorrow we got the Warriors Rockets game. So good stuff there. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. I'll see if I record anything tomorrow. I'll see if I can, find the time to do that. But if not, I will talk about the other games that have happened over the course of these next couple of days and going into the weekend. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.